I am here today to talk to you about the future of our country. Our people are strong, and we will prevail.
Ouagadougou, the 12th of August, 20254, 17A. The night sky over Burkina Faso was clear, too clear. No clouds, no storms, just a veil of stars above a silence that felt wrong. In the capital, the city slept. But far to the north, in the Yaga province, something moved. A black SUV, no license plate, speeding across the scrublands. Inside, 4 men, speaking in low-coded French. In the back, crates marked engrais fertilizer. But thermal scans from a SIGINT relay tower flagged unusual heat signatures, not soil enhancers, but explosives, enough to level 3 villages. One of those villages? Koundougi, the birthplace of Captain Ibrahim Traoré's grandfather. The signal was intercepted at 3:41 a.m. by a buried listening node just south of Dori. Voiceprint confirmed mercenaries, affiliates of a known PMC linked to past gold mine sabotage. Another ping, a drone camera briefly caught an RPG barrel peeking from the rear window. There would be no second ping. The vehicle vanished into the folds of the Sahel. The alert hit the situation room inside the presidential command bunker like a hammer. No time for committee votes, no room for diplomatic cables. Traoré stood quietly as the last line of transcript played, Livrez à l'aube, frappez fort, deliver at dawn, hit hard. He didn't speak, he nodded. 2 aides stood. No debate. No permission slip from the West. No signature from the African Union. At 4:19 a.m., the captain walked from the concrete room to the launch terminal. Cameras off. Security sealed. One sentence on record. They're targeting my people again. I won't wait for the funerals. But why now? Why strike with full force on a quiet night when the world wasn't watching? What changed in the mind of a man known for silence over spectacle? And how did a buried village become the front line of a geopolitical rupture? Could this be the beginning of a new doctrine where preemptive defense no longer asks for international approval, but earns local survival? And when a leader stops warning and starts launching, what message is truly being sent? It wasn't thunder. It was the hiss of pressure valves deep beneath the dry earth of northern Burkina Faso, a sound that meant something was about to launch, not land. Above, the stars were steady. Below, fluorescent lights buzzed against bare concrete. Inside a former agricultural depot, now transformed into a military-grade launch center, 5 unmanned aerial vehicles stood upright like loaded spears. 5 red markers blinked on the main console. Target, confirmed. Payload, armed. Command, waiting. 3 days earlier, the prototype drones had passed their final test flight, exceeding Western benchmarks in stealth, endurance, and target tracking. Designed, coded, and assembled entirely by local engineers, not in Paris, not in Washington, but in Bobo-Dioulasso, Ouahigouya, and the remote labs of Fada. They worked under pressure, with no margin for failure, 72 hours, no sleep, just grit, caffeine, and a nation's breath on their necks. This wasn't just tech. This was sovereignty. Dr. Luma Tenari, lead on Project Jamila, stood silent for a beat. Her hand hovered above the final key, eyes locked on the thermal feed, a convoy approaching Arbinda. 6 vehicles, 3 armored, 2 weaponized pickups, and a truck marked as fertilizer transport. Intelligence confirmed, explosives on board, targeting remote communities tied to Traoré's lineage. The old strategy, terror by proxy. But this time, the response was Burkinabé. Drone 1, hot. Drone 2, locked. Project Jamila execute. With a cold metallic click, 5 UAVs disengaged from their harnesses and vanished into the night sky. No roar, no trail, just motionless air left behind. Their wings sliced through silence, flying low, undetected formation perfect. Their markings were simple, a hand-painted stallion. No external contractor, no foreign firmware, no backdoors. Above the Sahel, the rules had changed. The convoy moved confidently, too confidently. They didn't jam frequencies, didn't shield heat signatures. They believed the skies still belonged to someone else. But they didn't know the skies had been taken back. So how did this landlocked nation with no drone force a year ago just deploy a stealth operation rivaling global powers? What changed not just in its tools but in its resolve? And if this was just the first strike? What comes next when Africa no longer asks permission to defend itself? A flash, then silence. Not the kind of silence that follows peace, but the kind that follows precision. Above the scrublands of Arbinda, 5 drones hovered invisibly, each guided by AI, each trained on a different slice of death. 3 priority targets locked: the command vehicle, the jamming van, and a black pickup with unstable explosives, marked as agricultural fertilizer. The order came in clear. No warning shot, no negotiation. Just 3 missiles. One after the other. Fast, legal, final. The first vaporized the jammer, severing all radio comms before a distress call could echo. The second found the truck's undercarriage, where a thermobaric wave ignited the payload before detonation. The blast lit the bushland in ghostly orange. The last, a heat seeker, struck the lead SUV, the mobile command hub, where 2 men with satellite uplinks were reportedly coordinating foreign supply routes. Nothing remained but steel shards and scorched gravel. The entire strike lasted 11.4 seconds. This wasn't just a drone attack, it was a doctrine. A message. President Ibrahim Traoré issued no press conference, no televised speech. He simply wrote 7 words on a secure line. Let them know, Africa doesn't wait anymore. 3 nations had warned him not to act. Intelligence agencies had asked for time, for evidence, for permission, for process. But when did the Sahel last benefit from waiting? And now, the question echoes not in embassies, but in skies once owned by someone else. If Africa can strike first and clean, who really controls the rules of war? And if silence precedes action, what will follow when Africa stops being silent? The roof leaked, the floor creaked, and yet inside that abandoned grain warehouse outside Kodougou, history was being soldered together 1 wire at a time. No foreign aid, no military contract, just scavenged circuit boards, 3D printed frames, cooling systems built from repurposed fan parts, and lines of code scraped together across midnight chats. The men and women here didn't wear uniforms. They wore grease-stained shirts, taped glasses, and resolve. This was the unofficial UAV lab of Burkina Faso. It started with a visit. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't arrive with a convoy. No fanfare, just boots in the dust and a single request. I'm not asking for weapons, I'm asking for a future where we never have to ask again. That's when Dr. Luma Tenari agreed to lead what would later be called Project Jamila, not as a scientist, but as a citizen. She had no illusions. The state wouldn't protect them. The world wouldn't help them. She needed allies, discreet ones. Enter Dan Velik, a retired Russian AI architect living off-grid in Lomé. He didn't bring hardware, he brought warnings. The danger won't come from the sky, he said. It'll come from the ones who ask too many questions. So they stopped answering questions and started building firewalls, in-house navigation systems, signature-evading thrust calibrators, AI trained on Sahel wind patterns, not American deserts. Every line of code had a fingerprint, every bolt a defiance. No outside logo, no foreign flag, just one question painted above the hangar door. What if we never had to wait again? So who else is building futures inside broken warehouses? Who else is done asking for permission? And if a revolution begins not with a weapon but with a wire, what else is already flying under the radar? Dust curled in the air as the goats scattered. A woman screamed not out of fear, but warning. In Amora, a quiet farming village in northern Burkina Faso, there was no army base, no police station, no satellite dish, only red soil, thatched roofs, and stubborn courage. Locals had seen the convoy hours before. 4 vehicles, dust-colored, no plates, moving slow, deliberate. Mercenaries again, not the first time, but this time, closer. Everyone said leave. But Mariam Amori, the village elder, refused. If they want this land, they'll have to walk through me, she said, planting her walking stick in the ground like a flag. Her son Tilo, barely 16, ran to the old radio hut. He powered up the battered transceiver scavenged from a mining site, long abandoned, and tuned the dial by instinct. Static, then code. One word in Morse. Crows. It meant drones were airborne. He transmitted coordinates, his fingers trembling. Somewhere hundreds of kilometers away, that signal hit the feed. Target fix confirmed. Convoy 3.6 kilometers from Amori. ETA 11 minutes. They didn't wait. A trio of UAVs already circling the sector shifted formation. Their algorithms had been trained for this. Low-speed convoys, Sahel wind drag, heat distortion off metal in dry brush. One drone locked onto the lead truck, the one carrying signal jammers. The second flagged the rear heat signatures, showed plastic explosives beneath rice sacks. The third, the command vehicle. 3 missiles. 3 explosions. No civilian casualties. Only smoke, twisted axles, and silence. An army official later confirmed the strike had neutralized 150 fighters and assets without a single Burkinabé boot touching the sand. In the aftermath, Commander Bakari Soma radioed in. They'll try again, but now, they know we don't wait. This wasn't just a win, it was a shift from reactive to preemptive, from calls for help to decisions of force. No tribunal, no UN vote. Just a village boy, a broken radio, and a president who gave the go-ahead. So, what happens when the people furthest from power suddenly become the ones who trigger it? And if a village can summon steel wings from the sky, how much longer can anyone pretend Africa is defenseless? The smoke had barely cleared, wreckage still hissed, drone footage circled the charred remains of what was once a well-supplied convoy, now splintered steel, melted circuits, and silence. But the real shock wasn't the blast. It was what lay inside. Burkinabé forces moved in under full perimeter lockdown, body cams on, evidence protocol tight. They weren't just securing the site, they were building a case. Inside the lead vehicle, fragments of F-2 rifles, French, minted, serials wiped but incomplete. One stock carried an old NATO training stamp. Near the axle, a jamming unit calibrated to NATO frequency bands, powered by a military-grade lithium cell, untraceable unless you knew what to look for. And then, a document, laminated, weather-sealed, buried under the seat. A map, not of Burkina Faso, but of the entire Sahel corridor. Marked in red, pipeline routes, mining zones, and rural airstrips. This wasn't a rogue militia. This was something bigger. That evening, a private call came in, from the French embassy, tense, cold, the ambassador's voice tight with legalese. Accusations flowed, unauthorized strike, escalation, violation of protocol, and the kicker. You've destroyed sensitive technology that was never meant to be in your hands. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't flinch. His reply was brief, surgical. It wasn't in our hands, it was in our soil. Then, after a beat, we don't need your permission to defend what's ours. Burkina Faso didn't file a complaint, it filed a boundary. No courtroom, no press leak, but a message was sent not just to Paris, but to every power still playing chess with African pawns. Later that night, Traore walked past the evidence room. Inside, sealed crates, tagged with red ink. On the wall, a map of Burkina Faso. On it, a single handwritten phrase: "Sovereignty is not a license, it's a fact." So when Europe demands answers about a war, it didn't declare who really crossed the line. And if foreign tech ends up in a village attack, who's really unauthorized now? The press room was tense, not a Hollywood-style tension, but the kind born of suspicion, quiet resentment, and the hum of a global order being defied in real time. On the small stage at Ouagadougou's National Civic Hall, Dr. Luma Tanari, still in her lab coat, stepped behind the microphone with no teleprompter, no security detail, just a dossier in her hand, and blueprints displayed behind her. Spectra 2, the UAV system that had taken out 150 mercenaries in a single coordinated strike. A drone platform designed not in Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv, but in Koudougou, Bobo Dioulasso, and the universities of Burkina Faso. The West said we weren't ready, she began. They were wrong. This, she held up a carbon fiber wingtip, was made by our hands, every chip coded in Moore, every line of logic written by Burkinabé youth, no imports, no licenses, no debt. The silence afterward was deafening. Then came the first question from a foreign correspondent, sharp, preloaded. Are you claiming this is 100% indigenous technology, even the stealth system? Luma smiled faintly. We don't claim, we demonstrate. That same day, authorities released a statement. A foreign NGO technician, embedded at a rural energy lab, had been caught trying to extract schematics from a restricted server. The individual held dual citizenship, their NGO, quietly suspended across multiple Sahel countries. What was dismissed as aid had become infiltration, not just of networks, but of trust. Burkina Faso had learned the hard way. What you build can be stolen, what you invent can be repackaged, and what you protect will be tested. Then came the surprise. The stealth design was not military grade. Classified, it was student-level innovation. Developed by Alassane Zouré, a two-year-old electrical engineering student from Kaya, who applied principles of termite mound airflow to scatter radar. His project was once dismissed as theoretical. Now it was battlefield-ready. The backlash was immediate. Editorials from Europe called it reckless escalation. One headline read, Africa's digital aggression. Another warned of unauthorized militarization. None acknowledged the fact that African data had been harvested for decades by foreign companies with zero transparency, yet when Africans defended themselves using local systems, it was suddenly a global risk. The government's answer? Legislation. The Autonomous Defence and Innovation Act, passed in a midnight session of Parliament, sealed the line. Clause 23 drew the most fire. We do not license what we create. We do not copy. We protect. A legal wall against patent bullying. A refusal to let the country's digital sovereignty be bartered off, sabotaged, or stripped in the name of global cooperation. It was the first law in Africa to criminalize unauthorized replication of indigenous defense technologies by any actor, foreign or local. But it wasn't just about protecting blueprints, it was about protecting the right to build without asking, to fail without ridicule, to strike without apology. Traoré's government didn't celebrate with fireworks, no parade, no anthem, just a quiet memo circulated to embassies. Our skies are ours. Our code is ours. Our silence is no longer yours. So now the question isn't whether Africa can innovate, it already has. The real question is, when that innovation is no longer for sale, what happens to those who only knew how to buy it? And if the future is being built in silence, behind warehouse doors and student dorms, who owns tomorrow and who's already too late? You enter in silence. No voice, no anthem, just air, thick with memory. Inside the Museum of Silence, light falls softly on a black wall carved with one sentence. We defended because we had no choice. This isn't a war memorial, it's a testament to restraint and resolve. To your left, encased in glass, a child's drawing stick figures under a drone in the sky, labeled Papa's Shield. Below it, a signed letter from a grandmother in Arbinda. I thought we were forgotten, but that night, the sky answered. Across the hall, suspended mid-air by wire, hangs the carbon composite frame of Spectra, one the first Burkinabé UAV to strike without foreign permission, foreign code, or foreign guilt. Next to it, fragments from the convoy it took down. One mangled SUV door, still showing traces of the NATO frequency band etched into the jammer it once carried. But what draws most visitors isn't the tech. It's the silent video of thermal recording of the 150-man convoy moving toward Amori village, then vanishing in coordinated light. No explosion sound, no music, just motion, precision. Then, stillness. That video plays on loop. Subtitles aren't needed, because people don't watch it for spectacle. They watch it to understand something that textbooks don't teach. Courage isn't always loud, and sovereignty isn't granted. It's enforced. Outside the capital, a flat piece of land stretches into green. No signs, no barbed wire, no tourists, just a playground. Swings made from drone cables, a football goal made of stripped carbon rods. The land once hosted the first Spectra field test. Now it grows millet, it holds laughter, and dust. It's where President Ibrahim Traoré came back one last time. No press, no motorcade, no official reason. He bent down quietly, picked up a small shard of rock shaped like an arrowhead, and slipped it into his pocket. He didn't speak. He didn't pose. He simply stood there for a moment long enough for one child to look up from the swing and wave. Traoré nodded, then walked away. That was the end of the operation, but not the story. Because this was never just about UAVs or military doctrine or shocking the world. It wasn't about sending a message to Paris or Washington or Brussels. It was about something much older, much deeper. The right to live without fear. The right to build without asking. The right to say, this is our air, our soil, our voice, and it is not for rent. What will remain long after the blueprints fade isn't the tech. It's the principle that a nation, any nation, can decide it will no longer be watched, exploited, or dictated to. That it can rise, not by imitating others, but by protecting its own. So maybe the final blow wasn't the missile. Maybe it was the quiet decision to act without applause and to defend without permission. And now the question is yours to carry forward. What would your nation look like if it chose courage over caution? And what would you do if fear was no longer in the way? If this story moved you, save the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because silence ends when people speak.